Welcome to this session, Combating Childhood Obesity, a holistic approach of the past to the present and into the future. My name is Richard Lomax. I'm the Regional Account Manager with Novo Nordisk, and we are proud to sponsor the Leadership Summit of Healthy Communities Plus Youth Edition. At Novo Nordisk, we work to improve the lives of people with obesity by collaborating broadly to change how the world sees, prevents, and treats obesity. Through prevention, we work to build healthier environments to enable improved health. We recognize and work to foster empathy for people with obesity and make obesity a healthcare priority. And finally, Novo Nordisk works to ensure people with obesity have access to science-based and comprehensive care. Please feel free to visit our website, truthaboutweight.com, to learn more. Childhood obesity in South Carolina ranks number 3 in the United States, according to the 2018-2019 National Survey of Children's Health. We are all very familiar with the contributing factors to childhood obesity and the policy, systems, and environmental change strategies used to improve health outcomes. But what's missing? A closer look at social determinants of health and a holistic approach could very well be the answer. Today's speakers are from South Carolina State University in Orangeburg. They are Director of Didactic Programs and Dietetics, Carmen Thompson, and Assistant Professor, Kimberly McLean. I hope you all enjoy learning more about social determinants of health and obesity.
Good afternoon. I am Kimberly McLean, and I have Ms. Carmen Thompson, who will be presenting with me today. As two dietitians that have been in the field for a number of years, this topic is very dear to us because it's affecting so many lives. The topic of obesity, specifically childhood obesity, have bombarded our society in such a detrimental way. So I will begin the discussion on our topic, Combating Childhood Obesity, a holistic approach of the past to the present and into the future. A quick overview of what we will discuss today, the objectives for this session, a brief background with statistics on childhood obesity in the US and in South Carolina. How did we get here? Looking at the 1960s to the present, factors that contribute to childhood obesity, roles of the family, roles of the community, and community resources actually in South Carolina. And then we will conclude. So at the conclusion of this presentation, you should be able to identify the major factors that contribute to childhood obesity, explain the roles that families and communities play in combating the childhood obesity epidemic, and examine the various community resources that South Carolina has to individuals addressing issues related to childhood obesity. So childhood obesity impacts almost 14 million children in the US. Children and adolescents are at risk for poor health. And when I say poor health, obesity during childhood can harm the body in a variety of ways. Children who have obesity are more likely to have high blood pressure and high cholesterol, which are risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Also, children may have increased impaired glucose intolerance, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes. Those are other risk factors for health that stem from obesity. Obesity prevalence among children and adolescents continue to rise in the US. One of the tools used to collect data in the United States is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. This is a survey research program conducted by the National Center for Health Statistics to assess the health and nutritional status of adults and children in the United States. And what it does is track their changes over time. Data collection on the current names, which is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, began in early 1999 and remains a continuous annual survey. Each year, approximately 7,000 randomly selected residents across the United States have the opportunity to participate in the latest names. So in 2015-2016, data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey showed the prevalence of obesity in children and adolescents was 18.5%. And that is about 13.7 million children and adolescents had obesity. Obesity prevalence was 13.9% among 2 to 5-year-olds, 18.4% among 6 to 11-year-olds, and 20.6% among 12 to 19-year-olds. Childhood obesity is more common among certain populations. Hispanic and non-Hispanic Black children had higher obesity prevalence than non-Hispanic white children. Non-Hispanic Asian children had lower obesity prevalence than non-Hispanic Blacks and Hispanic children. In South Carolina, childhood obesity ranks third among the 50 states and DC, the District of Columbia. Kentucky ranking first and Mississippi ranking second. In South Carolina, 22.1% of youth ages 10 to 17 have obesity. 11.4% of children ages 2 to 4 participating in WIC in South Carolina have obesity. And 16.6% of high school students in South Carolina have obesity. Another tool used to collect statistical data is the CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System. This system monitors priority health risks and experiences among high school students across the country. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey results help in understanding risks that contribute to the leading causes of death and disability among youth and young adults. So according to the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System survey, nutrition habits of South Carolina high school students are as follows. 20.1% had high soda consumption. 22.4% did not eat breakfast. 12.5% had low fruit consumption, and 12.1% had low vegetable consumption. And we compared it to the national percentages across the US. Also, according to the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System, physical activity among South Carolina high school students are as follows. 80.7% had low physical education participation, so they didn't participate a lot in the in PE, that's what we call it in schools. 21.7% was physically active. 40% had high computer usage, and 23.9% had high television usage. So this slide and the prior slide shows how this epidemic is closely related to the dietary habits and physical activity behaviors of our youth, and how it is important that we as educators, community leaders, parents, children, and all individuals that are impacted continue to engage in discussion and implementation on what is the best way to intervene in this childhood obesity crisis. So when we look at these statistics on physical activity and dietary behaviors, the question arises, how did we get here? When did it begin? In researching this topic, the prevalence of childhood obesity in the US was stable through the 1960s and 1970s, then began to rise in the 1980s. There were no national surveys of childhood obesity before 1963. During the 1960s and 70s, children played outside more so than they do today. I can remember growing up in the late 70s and the 1980s, the highlight of coming home from school was eating dinner around 4:15, 4:30, completing homework, and then rushing outside to play until the sun began to set or the street lights came on. There was consistency of physical activity daily without consciousness. Changes in the obesity prevalence from the 1960s show a rapid increase in the 1980s and 90s, when obesity prevalence among children and teens tripled from nearly 5% to approximately 15%. So what happened in the 1980s, 1990s? I think a lot of us remember the commercial Supersize Me. In the United States, McDonald's introduced the supersize option in April of 1992. The company announced in March 2004 that it would phase out the option, citing needs to simplify their menu and to offer healthier food choices. However, currently, a small drink is 16 ounces. That's 2 8-ounce cups, approximately 2 8-ounce cups. A medium is 21 ounces, almost 3 8-ounce cups. And a large is 30 ounces, almost 4 8-ounce cups. So to put it in perspective, if a 8-ounce cup of Coca-Cola has 100 calories and 26 grams of carbohydrates, which is sugar, getting a large drink at McDonald's or any fast food establishment, you or your child would be consuming approximately 400 calories and 104 grams of carbohydrates just from the beverage that you are consuming with your meal. So this is showing how food portions have drastically changed over the years, which has resulted in the increase of obesity in America. Beginning in the 21st century, a lot of policy changes began to take place that affected children's health. One in particular was the No Child Left Behind policy that was signed into office by President George W. Bush. No Child Left Behind was the main law for the K-12 general education in the United States from 2002 to 2015. The law held schools accountable for how kids learned and achieved. The law was controversial in part because it penalized schools that didn't show improvement. With the No Child Left Behind Act, it increased the focus on STEM subjects in schools, which resulted in cuts to other subjects such as physical education, music, art. This also added to the increasing obesity rate by shrinking the amount of physical education resources, such as new equipment and specialized physical education teachers. According to the American Heart Association, experts agree that increasing physical activity can help combat childhood obesity. Yet many schools are cutting back on PE programs because of lack of resources and competing academic standards. Now we have the pandemic, which has caused a dramatic halt in our everyday activities, resulting in increased computer, video, television usage, increase in consumption levels from snacking at home and ordering takeout from various fast food restaurants. a decrease in physical activity, which all of these components are contributing factors to obesity, not only for our youth, but the adult population as well. So we just talked about some of the factors and kind of looked at it from 1960 up into the present. But some of the contributing factors to childhood obesity also range from dietary choices, family characteristics, sedentary behaviors, genetics, and parenting lifestyles. In regards to dietary choices, most Americans patronize fast food and dine in restaurants more so than preparing a home cooked meal for families. And there are definitely reasons for this. Don't get me wrong, I understand. However, to combat this epidemic, we must begin choosing options that are beneficial not only for our children, but ourselves as well. Some other contributing factors to this epidemic is sugary beverages such as sodas, juices, punch, etc., and snack foods such as chips, cookies, candy bars, all have high sugar content and empty calories that our children are consuming in alarming records. A new study found that high calorie snacking is proving to be a major cause of childhood obesity. Chips, candy, and snack foods account for up to 27% of the daily caloric intake for children ages 2 to 18, according to the findings by researchers at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Federal nutrition surveys on food and eating habits of more than 31,000 children were studied from 1977 to 2006. Researchers concluded that childhood snacking trends are moving toward 3 snacks per day, and more than 27% of children's daily calories are coming from snacks. They found the largest increases in salty snacks and candy, with desserts and sweetened beverages the major sources of calories from snacks. Also, the rise in obesity rates over the past 30 years has been paralleled by increases in the portion size of many foods and the prevalence of eating away from home. On average, a portion of protein, such as a steak at a steakhouse, range from 6 to 20 ounce portion. For people who eat meat, the amount recommended as a part of a healthy meal is 3 to 4 ounces. It will look like a size of a deck of cards. Family characteristics play a role in childhood obesity. Children mimic parents. If the parents consume fast food daily, the child usually will consume fast food daily. Parents' work-related demands result in fast food consumption opposed to home-cooked meals. Most parents are stretched thin. I know this because I am a parent. So between work from 9 to 5, picking up kids from extracurricular activities, house chores, appointments, and the list goes on, which definitely pose a challenge with cooking meals at home on a regular basis. However, as stated before, because our kids are eating more of fast food opposed to home cooked meals, this has contributed to the rise in childhood obesity, or we can say obesity in general. Therefore, we must start finding creative ways of incorporating more home cooked meals into our lifestyle. It could be making a big Sunday meal to last Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday having all ingredients prepped and ready for a quick taco night when you get home. We must, as parents, create a plan to tackle this epidemic by any means necessary. to create a better lifestyle for our children and our future grandchildren. So another contributing factor is sedentary behaviors. Watching television and playing video games for 4 to 6 hours or even more each day. An international team of researchers analyzed 58 studies involving more than 480 children and teens aged 4 to 18. The analysis revealed that the more time your young people spent watching television and or playing video games, the greater likelihood their grades suffered. So it is not only a factor when it comes to obesity, but also academic performance. Some children are at greater risk for obesity because of genetics. They have inherited genes from their parents that make their bodies gain weight easily. Genetics is not the only cause of obesity. To become obese, children must also eat more calories than they need for growth and energy. Obesity may be linked to rare genetic conditions such as Prader-Willi syndrome. Prader-Willi syndrome is a disease that is present from birth. It is the most common genetic cause of severe and life-threatening childhood obesity. Another factor is parenting lifestyle. Research has shown that the proportion of variance in childhood weight status explained by underlying family lifestyle increases from 7% at age 3 to 11.3% by the age of 7, suggesting that improvements to family lifestyle could significantly reduce the likelihood of obesity in a child. So as a parent, not engaging in physical activity will usually result in a child not engaging in physical activity. It is within the home where health behaviors are learned and maintained, and where children develop most of their strategies for interacting with the environment. So generational eating habits is also a factor that could contribute. How my mother prepared her meals is how I prepare my meals. If your mother prepared her meals in a healthy manner and served meals at the same time every day, then usually the child will adopt those habits as well. So I have given stats on childhood obesity in the United States and South Carolina. How did we get to this place of childhood obesity and the contributing factors to this epidemic? Now, Ms. Carmen Thompson will give us strategies for the family and community to combat this challenge and discuss some current community resources in South Carolina that are taking the lead to fight this childhood obesity. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mrs. McLean. Hello, I am Carmen Thompson, and I will briefly discuss the role of the family, community, and resources in combating childhood obesity. On the screen, you will see some suggestions for the family may use in preventing and combating childhood obesity. As Mrs. McLean stated, the development of childhood obesity started many years ago with various changes in the commercial food service industry, reducing physical education in the schools, and other factors. But let's start at the beginning. Let's start with infants. Breastfed infants have the benefit of a reduced risk of obesity. There are many other benefits to breastfeeding, but we're just going to talk about this reduced risk for this program. Breastfeeding infants stopped being popular after the introduction of formula during the 1950s. This is not a shame game if moms decide not to breastfeed. This is just to provide information. When mothers do breastfeed their infants, it allows the infant to control their intake and learn when they're full. When infants are bottle fed, the formula or breast milk exit the nipple due to gravity. Breastfed infants apply pressure to the mother's areola, which causes the milk ducts to deliver milk to the mother's nipple. Therefore, the infant has some control on how much they want to eat. Not overfeeding children is a large factor. From the WIC Breastfeeding Food and Nutrition Service of the Department of Agriculture, they have provided some infant feeding cues, which help parents to identify when their infants are hungry. These cues have 3 stages. The early cues are lip smacking, opening the mouth, and turning the head or rooting, looking at the mother's breast. Mid cues consist of stretching, hand to the mouth, and increasing movement to let the parent know, okay, I'm really feeling hungry now. I think it's time, for the breast or the bottle. And the late cues is when everything is over and they're screaming their eyes out and they're moving all over the place because now they are just almost inconsolable because they want to be fed. Learning these cues in addition to the cues where, your infant, the infant wants attention, they need their diaper changed, or maybe they just want to play, or they just want to look at mom and dad. But learning these cues, the difference between these and the feeding cues is very important. As a parent, you want to look at your weight and height and your behaviors. Parents, look at the proportion of your weight to your height. Is it healthy for you? Look at your behaviors and physical activity, eating habits, and also social activities. Parents powerfully shape children's early experiences with food and eating, providing both genes and environments for children. In research done by Savage in 2007, it was found that children's eating patterns develop in the early social interactions surrounding feeding. Parental influence on eating and behavior is very significant. Research indicates that the extent to which fruits and vegetables are present and readily available and accessible in the home correlates positively with the level of consumption in school-age children. It was also noted that for children and adults, the intake of large portions is not associated with weight status, suggesting that the relevance of large portions to weight gain is not a function of exposure to large portions. Rather, it is a particular susceptibility of the overweight adult individual to overeating large portions when they're available. Evidence from laboratory studies suggests that larger portions served to consumers at restaurants, in convenience stores, and also at grocery stores and other retail establishments are the driving increases in the average size of portions consumed both at home and away from home, as well as increasing the daily energy intake of children. As parents, what we expose our children to as far as meals, snacks, and portions has a very big influence. Trying skim milk or reduced fat milk at the age of 2 and above, this reduces the intake of dietary saturated fat while you're not sacrificing the calcium, calories, vitamin D that's necessary for the growth of the child. Encouraging fruits and vegetables is quite easy with the use of the myplate.gov website. Fruits and vegetables are the sources of many essential nutrients that children do not get enough of, including potassium, dietary fiber, vitamin C, and folate. Most vegetables are low in calories and fat. Diets rich in potassium may help to maintain healthy blood pressure. Dietary fiber from fruits as a part of an overall healthy diet helps reduce blood cholesterol levels and may lower the risk for heart disease. Fiber is important for proper bowel function. Vitamin C is important for growth and repair of all body tissues and helps heal cuts and wounds and keeps the teeth and gums healthy. Vitamin C also helps the body absorb iron easily. Vitamin A helps keep skin, hair, and eyes and also healthy and also helps protect us against infection. As you're increasing your intake of fruits and vegetables, we hope that this will encourage the family to lower their intake in juices, as Mrs. McLean said in one of her earlier slides. The American Academy of Pediatrics policy statement was first published in 2001 and reaffirmed again in 2006 and 2017, which recommends no juice for children younger than 6 months of age. 4 to 6 ounces of juice daily for children's age 1 to 6 years, and 8 to 12 ounces of juice for children 7 and older. The Academy of Pediatrics recognizes that juice may provide some vitamins, such as vitamin C, in orange juice and calcium and vitamin D in other fortified juice products, but it lacks the fiber and protein critical for children's growth. Next slide. Limiting television, screen time, and getting the family involved with physical activity, as we see in the slide on this screen. In 2017, a research study was done on screen media exposure and obesity in children and adolescents by Robinson and others. Randomized control trials of reducing screen time in community settings have reduced weight gain in children, demonstrating a cause and effect relationship. Current evidence suggests that screen media exposure leads to obesity in children and adolescents through increased eating while viewing, exposure to high calorie, low nutrient foods, and beverage marketing that influences children's preferences, purchase requests, consumption habits, and the reduction of sleep duration. And since we're reducing the screen time, we can get moving as a family. Parents can also create a home where being active is the norm, walking or biking with their kids to school, planning fun activities outside with families and friends, keeping the television and other screen time at a minimum, and simply encouraging children to go out and play. And parents can make sure that kids regularly get enough sleep, since healthy sleep has been linked to a healthy weight. As parents, we have many errands to run, many responsibilities with work, along with our family and other outside activities. And one of our requirements, we have to give their yearly checkups. So at a yearly checkup, go ahead and ask that practitioner about the body mass index of your child. The United States Preventative Services Task Force recommends that clinicians screen for obesity in children and adolescents 6 years of age and older, and to offer the parent or refer them to comprehensive, intensive behavioral interventions to promote improvements in weight. And in addition, love your child no matter where they are, and just also incorporate those family meals as much as possible, giving your child a little job to do, such as when they're younger, maybe setting the table, maybe folding the napkins in half, maybe even getting something out of the refrigerator for mom or dad for that meal preparation time. Okay, next slide. Okay. At the daycare, preschools, and after-school care, we want to encourage the reduction of processed foods. In a research study done by the National Institute of Health, ultra-processed foods was found that ultra-processed foods have ingredients common in industrial food manufacturing, such as hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, flavoring agents, and emulsifiers. They are often cheap and more convenient than making a meal from whole foods. Whole foods are foods that have little or no process to the product, but they're usually very high in calories, salt, sugar, and fat. This study compared body weight changes and calorie consumption in 20 healthy adults, 10 men and 10 women, who ate either a ultra-processed or minimally processed diet for 2 weeks. The participants stayed at the clinical center for 28 straight days. Each spent 2 weeks on both of the diets. They received 3 meals a day, plus snacks made up of ultra-processed foods or minimally processed foods. For example, an ultra-processed breakfast might consist of a bagel with cream cheese and turkey bacon, and a minimally processed breakfast might be oatmeal with bananas, walnuts, and skim milk. The ultra-processed and minimally processed meals had the same number of calories, sugars, fat, fiber, and carbohydrates. Participants could eat as much or as little as they wanted. They reported that both diets tasted good and were satisfying. For the results, the persons ate about 500 calories more per day on the ultra-processed diet than on the minimally processed diet. These increased calories came from carbohydrate and fat. People also ate faster on the ultra-processed diet and gained on average about 2 pounds. When they were on the minimally processed diet, they lost on average about the same amount of weight. Also, another topic is encouraging a breastfeeding friendly environment. As we said in the first slide that I talked on, breastfeeding gives many health benefits. One of the health benefits is a reduced risk for children to develop obesity. Let moms know that they're welcome to breastfeed in the child care centers. Offer mothers a private place where they can go to breastfeed or express breast milk. Let moms know they are welcome to breastfeed at your place of business. Provide materials to support breastfeeding, such as brochures and pamphlets. South Carolina's law states that women can breastfeed anywhere that they are authorized to be, and that breastfeeding is not to be considered public indecency. Next slide. In the school environment, preschools, elementary, middle schools, and high schools, we want to promote the intake of fresh fruits and vegetables by having in our vending machines water, beverages that do not have a high sugar content, and just fresh fruits as a selection instead of the high carbohydrate processed foods that are usually in the vending machine. We also want to offer nutrition education for children as far as food demonstrations to get them involved with meal preparation. School gardens is also a wonderful idea. So students can get an idea of actually where a carrot comes from. A carrot comes from the ground, but how does it grow? How do you take care of it? Another topic is access to school psychologists for families and students. The association between stress in early life and obesity and overweight in adulthood is well established. There is also increasing evidence of a link between stress exposure in childhood or in utero and child and adolescent obesity. Major sources of early life stresses include adverse childhood experiences such as abuse, poverty, food insecurity, and poor relationships with primary caregivers. Allowing our families to have access to this mental health professional provides a link in helping to treat obesity. And also making our physical education programs last a decent amount of amount of time, having more resources for that physical education program for those students. And next slide. Healthy food environments. One of the factors that do not allow a healthy food environment is a food desert. Food deserts are communities which do not have access to fresh produce, fresh protein selections, or dry goods. This is where, as a community, we have to get involved in the political makeup and encourage our political leaders to have supermarkets, fresh markets in these food deserts to allow these people to have access to fresh produce that is economically feasible, that's not overpriced. In an earlier slide, we talked about how a soda provided maybe like 100 grams of carbohydrates. Well, you wouldn't know that unless you're a dietitian or you're studying nutrition. So having food service establishments in your community to put on the menu or or on a placard on the table, letting you know for the foods that you're ordering, how many calories are available for this dish, how many grams of carbohydrate, how many milligrams of sodium, letting patrons know what they're eating, helping the whole community to be involved in being healthier. Next slide. Community health workers. Research was recently published in the Pediatric Obesity Journal that described a study of children from racial and ethnic minority groups or who lived in poverty experienced elevated rates of obesity. One potential method for reducing childhood obesity disparities is to involve community health workers. These are frontline public health workers who are trusted members of the community and usually have a very close relationship to that community. Results demonstrated that community health workers played various roles in childhood obesity interventions in the home, in the clinic, school, and community settings. Findings from this review demonstrated that partnering with the community health workers may be an important strategy for reducing childhood obesity disparities and advancing health equity. There is, I believe, an establishment in the Columbia area called Let's Cook Culinary Schools. This is similar to, this is a private entity where you would pay for the services, but a community health worker would provide similar services such as these for a community, teaching a family, teaching young people about good nutrition, how to cook different dishes, letting the kids experiment on different things that they like, different tastes. Next slide. Also, we want to, our hospitals also, they offer many benefits to us as far as education for nutrition, lactation education. We also want to encourage our hospitals to become baby-friendly hospitals. This is a global program used to encourage the broad-scale implementation of the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding and the International Code of Marketing of Breastfeeding Stimulants. Walking trails is another entity that can be added to the hospital to allow patrons to walk outside while their loved one is in the hospital, or to just take a break, or just to come in. You're in the community, you just want to come there to get some exercise where you know it's a safe area. Next slide. Also with the community, want to continue to encourage that physical activity for those families, encouraging physical activity in the community. You may also use point of decision prompts, which are motivational signs placed in a near a stairwell or at a base of an elevator, an escalator, to encourage individuals to increase their stair usage. Markers may also indicate how long it takes to achieve a mile or more. Okay, next slide. We have many resources in our state that are available to help our families increase their physical activity, nutritious habits, and also healthy lifestyles. The healthiergeneration.org information is on the screen. Dr. Joanne Avery in the Anderson District 4 stated that we've seen attendance, concentration, and overall academic performance improve when you provide healthy nutritional choices and opportunities for physical activity. Pete Ellis, a physical education teacher at West Florence High School, stated that working with committed individuals at each school, I was able to lead both a primary school and a high school to make healthy changes and receive the National Healthy Schools Bronze Award. Next slide. The South Carolina Farmers and Roadside Marketing app provides a user-friendly app which provides the location, times of operation, and information on produce sold at farmers markets and roadside stands. These markets accept the WIC Farmers Markets vouchers and also the Seniors Farmers Market vouchers. Next slide. Eat Smart moved more South Carolina between 2018 and 2000 has funded Let's Go 3.0 mini grants in amounts of $5,000 to 46 communities across the state. The mini grants were used to fund healthy eating and active living projects that support policy systems and environmental changes. For a third year in a row, Eat Smart Move More South Carolina is partnering with the 7th Episcopal District of the AME Church to teach teens about the Young Healthy People Empowerment or HYPE project, and to help guide them through a project that focuses on healthy eating and or active living in their churches and communities. Next slide. The South Carolina Department of Social Services ABC GROW is in response to the growing state and national concern for childhood obesity. ABC Quality has partnered with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control for several years to incorporate new and enhanced nutrition, physical activity indicators into existing program requirements. Grow Healthy sets forth policies and practices to increase children's consumption of healthy foods and time spent being physically active while in childcare. Next slide. Okay. In conclusion, as we stated, South Carolina ranks number 3 in the United States for obesity. Factors that contribute to the rise in this dilemma vary from poor dietary habits, sedentary lifestyles, family characteristics, parenting lifestyles, and also genetics. Families and communities play a crucial role in prevention and treatment of the factors that contribute to this epidemic. Parents and communities must begin and contribute to work and continue to work together to alleviate this challenge. The resources that were available in this presentation and many other resources throughout the state are available to engage families and communities to actively participate in a healthier, more active lifestyle.
Thank you so much for an amazing session. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Everett. I am a community coordinator for Eat Smart Move More, and I will be moderating. Please submit your questions now. I do have a question. What is your advice for organizations in rural areas where it's harder to access physical activity options?
Oh, my suggestion would be to start off not slow, but start off at community organizations such as your church or synagogue, or maybe you have a social group, to go to your city council to ask for more access to more physical activity in that community. For example, maybe there's an old railroad or old empty lot, a railroad where the ties could be taken up and it could be made into a walking trail. Or maybe there is a vacant lot that can be made into a playground. But I would say, as a group, like I said, at a church or a synagogue or wherever you worship, or a social group, or just a group of families that are just concerned, go to your mayor, go to your city council, your county council, give them the statistics of the state of South Carolina as far as obesity in children, and ask them to work with you to incorporate more physical activity for the children.
Thank you. We have another question here. How do we keep youth engaged and let them know the importance of physical activity? Especially if they're not, I'm going to expand upon it a little bit, especially if it's not something that is seen as beneficial within their immediate family.
Well, I think the most important thing, it starts with the family. So we have to start talking to the parents, start talking to them at early on, before they even have children, to engage their children in physical activity, have different options for them, going swimming in the summer, taking a free basketball camp, or, anything that's out there for the kids that they enjoy doing. The parents need to engage them and start promoting a healthier lifestyle.
Lauren, when I talked in an earlier slide about the community health workers and the previous question that you asked me, asking those community leaders, what about hiring a community health worker for that community to help, to help engage those families that have young children in physical activity? Do you see what I'm trying to say? It has to be someone, within the community that can maybe talk to the parents, that can maybe provide some social activities that they would like to get involved in, that also incorporate some physical activity.
And also, I do want to say, Lauren, that churches are essential when it comes to getting the kids engaged in physical activity. So if that community worker can work with the churches, or somebody in the church that feel that there's a need, start some type of program with the kids, because that's a good starting point for us, the churches.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. This has been an incredible session, very informative.